My name is Eric Schoenwald, the Director of Development for the College of Nursing. It's great to see everyone, and we appreciate your time this afternoon. On behalf of the URI Foundation and Alumni Engagement Team and the College of Nursing, I'd like to welcome you to our Dean's Forum, Improving the Human Condition, URI's College of Nursing at 75 years. Yes, this is the college's 75th anniversary year, and today is the first of many gatherings to honor the significant impact that our college and alumni have made in improving the health and well-being of society. Our virtual audience includes alumni and friends from around the country, including the president of the URI Foundation and Alumni Engagement Team, Lil O'Rourke, and Vice President of Alumni Engagement, Michelle Noda. Thank you both for joining us. This is a milestone week for the College of Nursing and the university as we celebrate URI's Day of Giving on Thursday. The Day of Giving builds community and provides an opportunity for you to assist students and URI's educational mission through immediate impact support. We will share more about that later. Please note that this program is being recorded for future viewing, and we welcome your questions. To submit a question, please type them in the chat box where they will be curated by my colleague, Amy Simonini. I am honored now to introduce your 8th Dean, Dr. Barbara Wolfe. Dean Wolfe joined the College of Nursing in 2016. She was previously the Associate Dean for Research at the William F. Connell School of Nursing at Boston College and held a faculty appointment in the Department of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Her research on the topic of eating disorders has been funded by the National Institute of Mental Health for years, and she has disseminated this work through scores of publications and national and international presentations. Dean Wolfe received her PhD from Boston College and her MSN from Yale University. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing, the Eating Disorder Research Society, and Sigma Theta Tau Honor Society for Nursing. She's a past president of the American Psychiatric Nurses Association and served on numerous national committees, including chair of the National Institutes of Health Nursing and Related Clinical Sciences Studies section. Among her many awards are the prestigious Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Nursing Executive Fellowship, the American Psychiatric Nurses Association Psychiatric Nurse of the Year, and Yale School of Nursing's Distinguished Alumna Award. Let us welcome Dean Barbara Wolfe.
Thank you, Eric, and greetings to all of you. I am so delighted to launch our 75th anniversary year with this forum. Let me just take you a little bit down memory lane. From the first class of 8 sophomores in 1945 to a graduating class of 450 nurses today, URI has provided its students with foundational theory, clinical skills, firsthand experiences to become knowledgeable, compassionate nurses. Whether serving in hospitals, community settings, academia, or industry, our alumni are touching lives of millions. In the 75 years of our existence, the nursing profession has evolved to meet the complex needs of a fast-changing healthcare landscape. Over time, URI developed graduate degree programs, we've grown our research initiatives, and have collaborated with prominent institutions around the world. There have been advances in technology-aided patient interactions and personalized therapies. Nurses face new responsibilities serving a socially diverse population in a variety of healthcare settings. And as members of our family, you will be proud to know that last year, we dramatically improved our national rankings as measured by US News and World Report. We had a master's program that was ranked 66, that's up from 90 the previous year, and our DNP program ranked 85, up from 112. We also had our largest undergraduate cohort admitted this past year for the academic year of 2021, and we have exceptionally qualified individuals with an average GPA well above a 3.7. So pretty impressive. We have done exceptionally well also in recruiting talented individuals to be part of this great community. For the first time, we've hired our first ever Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and Research. Dr. Kathy Hutchinson has joined us. We also filled the Weyeker chair with Dr. Susan DeSanto-Madeya, who you will hear from shortly. And we continue to nationally recruit outstanding new faculty. And more recently this past year, Drs. Diana Lopez, who completed her doctoral studies at Harvard University, Kristen Corey McGann, who completed her postdoctoral studies at the University of Pennsylvania, and Liz Hudson from Ohio State University, and a senior researcher, Kim Arcolio, formerly of the University of Rochester and Ohio State University. So our research enterprise is likewise growing. We have many projects going on, but 3 projects in particular are federally funded by prestigious R01 research grants from the National Institutes of Health. And we also continue with training grant support with, again, federal funding from the Health Resources Services Administration, also known as HRSA, for a couple of projects. One's an academic clinical partnership to train nurse practitioners, another increasing diversity in the nursing workforce, and then also focusing on telehealth training, which is obviously proving to be an important component of the current pandemic. So to be clear, these accomplishments don't happen overnight. They are the product of generational progress, each era building on the foundation of the one before them. So today, we will hear stories of 2 College of Nursing undergraduate alumni who have harnessed their URI training to improve the human condition of their communities through extraordinary careers. We will also be hearing from our newest faculty recruit, who is training the next generation of URI nurses to carry us through the final quarter of our first century. So now I am pleased to introduce to you the chair of the College of Nursing's Advisory Council, and that is Rebecca Burke, RN, MS. Rebecca has served in numerous leadership positions throughout her 42-year career in nursing. She has held a variety of leadership positions at the Brigham Hospital over 30 years, including manager, director, senior vice president, chief nursing officer, and chief operating officer. During her tenure at Brigham, she led the organization through 4 successful magnet designations and served on the accreditation board of ANCC, or the American Nurses Credentialing Center. She has also held the position of Senior Vice President and Chief Clinical Officer, CNO, at St. Francis Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, and also Senior Vice President for Patient Care Services, CNO, at Kent Hospital in Warwick, Rhode Island. Rebecca has a graduate degree from Boston University and a certificate from the Wharton School Nurse Executive Program. She has participated in many professional organizations and has served as adjunct faculty for the URI College of Nursing over the years. She is also currently faculty at the URI College of Business in the Masters in Healthcare Management program, where she developed and is now teaching a course in leadership healthcare. Today, she will share her journey dedicated to a superb focus on patient care and her commitment to mentoring those around her, and why she rose to lead our advisory council. Rebecca, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Nice introduction. And I am delighted and honored to have been asked to be here today to share with you all how URI shaped my commitment to nursing and how it shaped my career. And why I've stayed connected to URI all these years, and why it's so important to me. And I think out of all 3 of us on the panel today, my story is probably the longest in duration, and not that I'm going to speak for a long time, but that means that I'm the longest duration in years. I've had a great 42 career year in full-time work, and now I'm giving back part-time by sharing my knowledge and experience with the younger generation in hopes that I can coach and mentor them into becoming effective healthcare leaders, which has been my background most of my career. When I was asked to be on this panel, I was reminded that my career spans more than half of the 75 years that the College of Nursing has been in existence, and that's quite a notable achievement. I'm a 1976 grad. So when I was preparing for this, I had to reach to the deep recesses of my mind to try to understand the feelings that I had when I was going to school back in my undergraduate program. In 1976, and many of you I saw on the list of participants today graduated around that time, there was no Whitehall. We shared a building with the College of Pharmacy, the Fogarty building. Some of you may remember that. And of course, the course curriculum was very different. But I have always had a feeling of loyalty and commitment to URI, maybe because I'm a Rhode Islander born and raised here. I've worked in other states, but I've always come back. And as I think back about my experience, I've always had a warm and comfortable feeling about URI. When you're a freshman, as is today, and anytime when anybody goes to college, there's always stress. But I do remember some notable moments where I believed the faculty had a large influence in how comfortable we felt as students. And I never felt uncomfortable asking for advice or guidance. So I believe the faculty and the quality of the faculty at URI back then, as is now, is very important in building relationships with students, an important factor for our long-term relationship with our undergraduate programs. Now, we all have had our favorite faculty person that we remember that made an impression on us. And for me, that was in my very first year. And some of you may remember Peggy Haggerty. Peggy was my very first clinical instructor. She was my clinical instructor. And I know the curriculum is different today, but back then there was Nursing 101 when you were a freshman. And I remember Peggy as being so warm and welcoming and a great role model. She had a great sense of humor, a wonderful laugh, and she was always encouraging and empathetic. She treated us as she would like us to treat our patients. And I can remember the mantra was, your patients are always first. And I can remember sitting around in some lounge, I think in a sorority house somewhere, talking about our clinical experiences and feeling very vulnerable and insecure. But Peggy made us feel great about what we did and how we did it. I never felt fearful or intimidated. So I believe that very first experience laid the very strong foundation about how I felt about nursing and how I felt about the University of Rhode Island and the profession in general. So as I think back about my relationship with URI over the years after I graduated, I discovered that there are many ways I've stayed connected. As I progressed into leadership positions and roles, the faculty at URI asked me on a number of occasions if I would be a preceptor to URI senior students. And of course, I said I would in a minute, and I had personally great experiences with that. And I do hope the students had great experiences. It is one way that I did give back, and that was in any organization that I went to as a chief nursing officer. I had notable mentors in my career, and I'm very willing to share my knowledge and experience with any of the future nurses. When I was promoted to CNO at the Miriam Hospital, and I spent 30 years of my career at the Miriam Hospital, it was part of my responsibility as the chief nursing officer to assure excellent patient care, of course. But I also believed my role was to support and improve nursing practice environment so nurses could practice at the full scope of their licensure and become great clinicians. And of course, Miriam was a magnet hospital. We achieved magnet in the late 90s, and my obligation was to continue with that designation. God forbid I be the CNO to lose the magnet designation, because that would be a horrible thing. So no CNO wants to do that. So in my efforts to make sure we maintain that designation, I set goals for the department mission and vision. And part of those goals required partnerships. I couldn't do it all myself. I needed a department and I needed outside organizations to help me. And one of those goals was to increase the number of baccalaureate nurses in the organization. And at the time, there were many nurses who had associate's degree and really wanted to have a bachelor's degree, but they wanted us to make it easy for them to walk off their shift and go to an auditorium, take the class, and then come back to their units and use their units as a laboratory. How perfect was that? That was great for me and great for the university. So I naturally turned to my alma mater. So in the early 2000s, that occurred in the early 2000s, I partnered with Dale Joseph, who was the dean at the time, and Paula Viu, who was the associate dean, to develop an on-site RN to BSN program. And at that time, it was funded by the organization, Lifespan, and that program was a great success. Over a 10-year period of time, which was the length of the program, we graduated 150 nurses with baccalaureate degrees, and it was a wonderful partnership between me, the organization, and URI. I also worked collaboratively in my career with Dr. Lori Lozon-Clabo, who came to me one time and said, you know, we're trying to develop the Clinical Nurse Leader Program at URI. It was a master's program. Now that program doesn't exist anymore, and it was an experiment, but I was certainly willing to join in on the experiment. I thought the role was creative. I thought that it was a role that could improve patient care and actually keep highly educated nurses at the bedside. So I recruited a number of nurses to go through that program. They got their master's degrees and they became clinical nurse leaders. And although the role doesn't exist anymore, they can say they were a proud recipient of an experiment, so to speak. And over the years, of course, I've been asked by the college to teach, as Dean Wolfe mentioned, in both the graduate and the undergraduate program. And I've been on the advisory board for a while, and now I am chair. So I am intricately connected to the University of Rhode Island School of Nursing. So as I look back, my relationship with URI School of Nursing is truly a symbiotic one. Just as I was inspired and influenced by those foundational faculty members in the early years and throughout my undergraduate courses, I hope that I, as a nurse leader, have inspired and influenced students from the college to be great nurses of the future. And lastly, I give back to the College of Nursing because I'm so grateful for that strong foundation and the partnership we've established. And I give back because the college was willing to engage with me when I was trying to achieve my professional goals. And all of that for which I am very grateful. So that is my story. I hope I have fulfilled the obligation to share with you how the College of Nursing shaped my career and my relationship with URI and why I give back. So now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, my colleague, Elaine Bridge, who also graduated from undergraduate URI. Elaine is the Vice President of Strategic Operations, Digital Health for Mass General Brigham. We all formally know that as Partners Healthcare. In this role, Elaine provides oversight of the ongoing optimization and expansion of the EPIC electronic health system across all of the hospitals in that system, the development of telehealth, which obviously we need so importantly now, and multiple enterprise data and digital health projects. Prior to assuming these responsibilities, Elaine was the Vice President of Clinical Operations on the Partners eCare leadership team, responsible for oversight and implementation of EPIC, the electronic medical record, and for the entire Partners system. She served as Vice President for Patient Care Services and Chief Nursing Officer and Interim Chief Operating Officer for Newton Wellesley Hospital. In addition to her degree at URI, she received a DMP from the Mass General Institute of Health Professions and her MBA from Framingham State College. She's a member and past president of the Organization of Nurse Leaders for both Mass and Rhode Island, and a clinical instructor for MGH and assistant professor for the Graduate School of Nursing at UMass Worcester. The creation and implementation of an electronic medical record is the most innovative, and I will absolutely agree, arguably the most disruptive milestone in our profession. We thank people like Elaine for doing the job that she's doing, and we're fortunate to hear from her how URI prepared her for taking on that very important task. So Elaine.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I am very pleased to be here today to discuss how the University of Rhode Island College of Nursing helped me to prepare to be the leader and innovator that I hopefully have become over the course of my career. Very similarly to Rebecca, I am a Rhode Islander born and bred, although I live in Massachusetts now. I come back to Rhode Island on a regular basis for all sorts of reasons, none the least of which is family, and the URI College of Nursing. I would say that I have a very strong personal connection to the university in that my dad and his twin brother graduated from URI in 1942. I have 4 siblings and a number of nieces and nephews that have attended or are attending, including a nephew who began his freshman year in September, or I guess August of this year. So it's fair to say that URI is very much a part of the fabric of my family and in my DNA. And so that's not going away anytime soon. When I think about and reflected on my experiences at URI and how they prepared me for my leadership and innovation roles along my career, which is very, very close to as long as Rebecca's, I did have a little bit of fun, as I think Rebecca alluded to, thinking back and considering what happened and how what happened in my college years, my bachelor's degree years, informed my career. I would say that at the time that we were at the URI College of Nursing, the bachelor's in nursing was not necessarily a given to the extent that it is today, more of a standard entry into practice. And so actually going for a bachelor's degree was perhaps unique and maybe different than a lot of my colleagues and friends from high school would have considered. But with that, and very early on in my time at URI, it was imparted to me that as a bachelor prepared nurse, I would be expected to take on leadership roles. And so the preparation across those 4 years was very much geared towards developing my skills and my confidence as a leader. It started in my clinical rotations, and I can remember being a very reluctant, almost timid clinician when I was first entering patient rooms as a student nurse. But as I got to the end of my time at URI, my senior rotation, clinical rotation in med-surg, my instructor, or my professor, I think at the time, was Ruth Waldman, who started to encourage me to go and help my colleagues and fellow students if they were struggling with something that I had mastered, and vice versa. And that starts to build your foundation of comfort and confidence as a leader. I was encouraged and participated in developing and coordinating the graduation pinning ceremony. Now that may not sound like a particularly large undertaking, but at the time, for me, a person that was not so sure-footed, that was a big deal and gave me another element of confidence that I could step up and take a leadership role in important and you know, then a graduation pinning ceremony was very important to me and my fellow students. That was a big deal and just another step in my progress as developing my leadership skills. I also learned that it was going to be important to develop a level of risk tolerance to be an effective leader. You are putting yourself out there, you are trying things on for size, you are necessarily going to make yourself uncomfortable, and you most assuredly are going to make other people uncomfortable along the way if you're pushing hard to make sure that you are doing your very best to lead folks through whatever it is you're leading them through. In terms of my degrees, getting an MBA instead of an MSN was also another point where I decided to deviate a little bit, take a chance, and get a background in business so I could talk the talk with my CFO colleagues. A decision that I do not regret, despite the fact that, you know, there was a very strong push and a very good argument for getting a master's in nursing rather than in business. And then finally, towards the I wouldn't say the twilight years, but towards the middle of my career, getting a DNP and deciding on a DNP versus a PhD was a point, an inflection point for me. And I went with a DNP because I had been practice oriented, and that has served me very well in my career. But URI also challenged me to consider my obligation as a professional nurse that went beyond the direct patient care delivery that I was going to perform in the early parts of my career. That I needed to develop intellectual curiosity, which I found key in my role as a CNO and COO, that I had to have that, take the opportunity where I had the view into creative ways to advance the health and well-being of patients, and also to continuously look for ways to improve the work environment for clinicians and others in the healthcare setting. That information sharing, that a safer environment, less fetching and more thinking, being contemporary and creative in the ways that we were practicing at the bedside and in the boardroom, quite frankly, were very important elements in how I did my job. I also began to see in that role in particular, which as Rebecca said, was at Newton Moseley Hospital, which is a smaller community hospital in the Partners, now Mass General Brigham network. I saw the importance and the opportunity to be an advocate for patients, be an advocate for nursing, for healthcare in general, and to look at the information that we were giving and getting from patients, to ensure that it was accurate and available and accessible and less onerous, both for our patients and for our clinicians. And along the way, because I am a nurse in my heart and soul, I really felt it important to be sure that anytime there was an opportunity for nursing to get a seat at the table and have a voice, that we be sure that there was a nurse at the table with a voice. And so that's where this wonderful opportunity working on the implementation of the Epic electronic health record came to pass for me. I decided to apply for the role as the VP of Clinical Operations for the then Partners system Epic electronic health record. It was a risky move. And I had a really great job, so I didn't need to do it from the perspective of needing my next job per se. But I did need to get out of my comfort zone, move in a new direction, and see what I could do to be that advocate for patients, for nursing, for healthcare in general. This was an innovative, but not strikingly innovative and cutting edge. The electronic health record has been implemented across many organizations before we did it at Partners Mass General Brigham, but it was innovative for us, and it most assuredly was patient focused. I made sure in my role as the VP of Clinical Operations that there was a nursing focus. We had plenty of physicians involved in the decision making, and we needed to have non-physician voices speaking up on behalf of the non-physician clinicians. But this was most assuredly, as Rebecca said, a disruptive process, and just by definition had a lot of risks associated with it, and ended up being probably the most challenging and difficult jobs I've ever done. It certainly tested my leadership capabilities and helped to develop them in a way that I couldn't have imagined. It forced me to be creative, to be able to get people to do something they were not necessarily sure they wanted to do. There's the head where people knew intellectually that this was the right direction to go for our patients and for our colleagues. But quite frankly, moving people from a position of unconsciously competent to consciously incompetent was a challenge. So I took that challenge on. I learned a lot. I have a few lumps and bruises to show for it. But at the end of the day, what I learned is that the disruption, while it requires courage and a willingness to fail, it was well worth the effort. And along the way, nurses transitioned more easily than many of the other clinical groups and continue to lead the way in adopting and adapting to the environment with an electronic health record and other technologies. And as I knew, I could count on them, and I continue to count on nurses to be that group of people that get it done. The outcomes of this project, just to close it out, is that the system is fully implemented. The Epic electronic health record is implemented across our system. We were able to implement it on our timeline, on time, on budget. And it wasn't a small budget, but we managed to spend most of it. It continues to serve, Epic continues to serve as a key foundation for our system as we move to a more system-like approach to how we get our work done. There's always more work to be done, and there's always ways to make the system work even better and leverage it in an optimal way. But it was a game changer, even though not necessarily, as I said, cutting edge across the industry, but it certainly was for us. In closing, why I stayed connected to the University of Rhode Island College of Nursing is because, as I said in the very beginning, it is in my DNA, but also the college has continued to model the importance of innovation, has pushed the boundaries and stayed intellectually curious, and is producing future nurses that model all of those attributes. And as I said, URI is a College of Nursing is foundational and integral to all that I have achieved and accomplished in my career. And so I feel a very strong obligation to stay connected and give back in whatever way I can. So at this point, it is my pleasure now to introduce to you one of the newest additions to the College of Nursing faculty. Susan DeSanto-Madeya is the Weyeker Chair and Associate Professor of Nursing. Her scholarship focuses on palliative and end-of-life nursing care. She is a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing in recognition of these contributions. She is a past Sojourn's Palliative Care Scholar, which provided her an opportunity to develop, implement, and evaluate an interdisciplinary palliative area certificate program. In addition to presenting her work at national and international scientific conferences, she has consulted globally in places including Israel, Switzerland, Japan, and Turkey. And with that, I introduce you to Susan.
Thank you, Elaine. What impressive alumni. I am absolutely thrilled to be part of the University of Rhode Island family and pleased to be here with you today. I'm delighted to be the Miriam Weyeker Chair for Palliative Care within the College of Nursing at the University of Rhode Island. This position allows me to build upon the strong legacy of thanatology started by Dr. Jean Miller and contemporize the manner to meet the rapidly growing and changing needs of our society. I'm excited to transition the program to palliative care, moving the conversation beyond death and dying to focus on living with serious illness and dying well. I look forward to building upon, refining, and growing an interdisciplinary program that provides our next generation of healthcare professionals with the knowledge and skills needed to optimize the quality of life and care for persons, families, and communities living with serious illness. As an interdisciplinary program, students from nursing and other healthcare-related disciplines, as well as non-healthcare-related students, will be exposed to the philosophy and principles of palliative care that touch every person's life, the complexities of living with serious illness, death, and dying, and the resources and strategies to incorporate into their professional and personal lives. As we will all experience chronic or serious illness and death in some way within our own lives, it is vitally important that students begin to explore these topics at an early age. In palliative care, the family is a unit of care, and emphasis is placed on the physical, social, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of the person, and the prevention of undue distress and suffering. I am and will be incorporating a wide variety of interactive teaching learning strategies that allow the students to self-reflect on their own values, beliefs, and goals, and also to be tolerant and open to differing values, beliefs, and care preferences. Most importantly, students will be provided with practical tools and resources that they can be used in practice and/or their personal lives to explore what is important, define quality of life, and identify end-of-life care preferences. Some of the examples of the teaching learning strategies are simulations spanning from diagnosis to end of life with standardized patients, following them across the illness continuum.
We're going to move on to Dean Wolfe, and we'll come back to you if we have time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. But what wonderful stories. And I'm sorry that we can't hear the rest of Susan's. But I want to thank the panelists here for sharing their perspectives and along with the audience to take time out of your busy day and be able to spend an hour with us over lunch on a Tuesday. This year, I'm very excited about because this marks the 75th anniversary of the College of Nursing. And as you just heard, there is no doubt about the significant and sustained contributions that it, and importantly, the alumni, have had on our theme here today, improving the human condition. And you have heard that through each of these individuals. Using an excellent education to build on the pillars of professional practice, education, research, policy, and innovation, our alums have cared for or indirectly impacted countless lives in need, often during the most vulnerable times. What a great way to have an impact on the world. And what a fabulous thing to celebrate as we are, in fact, 75 years strong. Our mission, as you've heard throughout these various different talks, is really to prepare nurses to excel as outstanding and compassionate clinicians, scholars, leaders who will enhance the health and the healthcare of individuals, families, communities, and populations, both locally and globally. The college continues to evolve as a dynamic catalyst for improving health and transforming healthcare, both through innovation and excellence in education, but also knowledge development, discovery, and professional practice, again, to meet the needs of a global society. As time goes on, we will continue to face new challenges and complexities in healthcare. That continues regardless of where we are in time, but we are reminded of this in particular with this most recent pandemic. URI College of Nursing has had 75-year legacy in proactively preparing the next generation for nursing excellence. And I know that when needed, I want a nurse who understands both the art and the science of nursing, and one who, armed with this understanding, can think big and make a difference to improve the human condition. I know that I want a URI nurse. I'd like to turn it over right now to Amy Simonini, our Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, who is happy to moderate the questions from the audience, and I hope you participate. Amy.
Thank you so much, Dean Wolfe. We do have a few questions here. We're going to get started off. Joyce said, it is commendable to increase diversity within the college, but as a nurse who represents nurses in front of boards of nursing, she sees a lot of diversity, but strong needs in terms of teaching staff about racism, implicit racism, and working with persons from other cultures and countries. Is URI also focusing on this, as well as working with area hospitals and corporations to hire more diverse nursing staff?
Great question, great question. And there's no single quick checkbox answer to this type of thing that obviously is a very huge issue right now in our society. So we have a number of prongs that are going on to help improve this and prepare people certainly for a diverse workforce, whether they are the individuals who bring that diversity or they are the individuals who might not have that diversity but have to care for patients and work with colleagues of different backgrounds. So we have a couple of things that are going on. One is we have a Diversity and Inclusivity Council. It's a Dean's Advisory Council around inclusivity and diversity. And it extends beyond our silo of a College of Nursing. It includes leaders in the area and the field. And actually not just restricted to our 60-mile radius or the state of Rhode Island, but actually globally to help us move that agenda forward. We also have something called the Pathways Program, and that is funded through a HRSA grant. That is helping to bring people in who have diverse backgrounds, but also providing the support because some of these individuals, for example, come from a whole wide range of backgrounds that might not necessarily have access to the same resources as people who come from more privileged backgrounds. And then we have other activities that are going on, certainly training of both faculty and staff, but also training of students. And then we also have, one of our faculty right now is doing a book group with individuals and reading things that are hot topics right now. So for example, there is a book that is out there called White Fragility. And they're reading that book and actually having some very dynamic conversations about what does that mean for all parties involved. So I hope that that answers your question, but it's a great question and very timely.
Thank you, Dean Wolfe. We do have another question. This question is for Elaine. Beyond electronic medical records, what other influential technological advances have you seen in the profession?
Thank you, Amy. There are a lot of technological advances, and so a couple that come to mind, quite frankly, for clinical nurses at the bedside, the electronic medication administration record, I think, is a very important and critical safety, closed-looped approach to delivering medications, where you are scanning the patient, the medication order, to be sure that all of that matches. You have the right patient, you have the right med, the right dose, the right time, and then that automatically transcribes into the electronic health record. Is a really wonderful system that allows for safe practice and safe administration of medication. We talked about telehealth a little bit here over the course of this hour, and certainly we saw at Mass General Brigham the almost instantaneous and unbelievable amount of adoption of virtual care or telehealth during the early days of our COVID experience, I would say March into April into May. Partly because the federal government and state government decided that they would pay for those visits that were not face-to-face but were electronic. But also because we didn't want to have face-to-face visits right then, but patients needed to be seen, so we needed to provide a reasonable alternative. So we call it virtual care partners or Mass General Brigham. It's called telehealth in many other spaces. We had programs in place ahead of this, but these are programs that can be delivered by any licensed independent practitioner, so MD, NP, PA, and it is a game changer, quite frankly, and we're all hoping that the regulations and the payment practices will continue well beyond the pandemic. In addition to that, we were able to deploy iPads, for example, into patients' rooms and use those as a virtual intercom, where we could do essentially a FaceTime visit with a patient from outside the room, which would keep all parties safe and diminish the potential for exposure, but also reduce the amount of PPE we were using as appropriate for different visits with our patients. And then the last technology that I'll mention, and as it relates to this question, is the patient portal, which I think is abundantly important and has become quite a second nature to many of us, even the least technologically savvy, and I include my husband as one of those people, will get on the Gateway portal and check on their labs, check on an office visit to see when it's due, pay a bill, get some information, find out where they can get a flu shot, et cetera. So that portal is, the patient portal is super important, and I know that that hospitals in Rhode Island are also using a very effective patient portal, as my relatives have told me. And so I think those are some of the technological solutions. There are many more in the pipeline and many more that we've deployed, but those are a few. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Elaine. And I must say, I join your husband. I'm a little bit technologically challenged sometimes, but I sure do love that patient portal.
Oh, wonderful.
So now we have a question for Rebecca. So Rebecca, you and all the panelists have earned graduate degrees. Is this necessary for leadership roles in a hospital setting?
I personally and professionally would say, I'll answer that question and say absolutely. As you know, if anybody knows me, they know that I've pushed nurses to be better educated over my entire career. So I am very much in support of that. And I know that when I held those senior administrative positions, that I would look for individual education. Nurses who get advanced degrees, I guess I also use the example of, would you hire an engineer without a degree? Or would you hire a pharmacist without an advanced degree? I mean, and why should nursing be any different? And I know that from the education perspective, we've struggled with that as a profession over the years. What's our entry level to practice? And there's been a lot of discussion about that. But I would say, You know, you can't get a job as a CNO anymore without a DNP or a PhD, or at least it's preferred. So I do think that it is extremely important, which brings us back to, you know, the URI College of Nursing that has the full spectrum of degree programs that are offered, which give people a lot more opportunity for a lot more positions and to make change for the future. So absolutely. Dean Wolfe might have some some opinion about that, but that's from my perspective as Senior Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And that takes me to Dean Wolfe. So how prevalent would you say the graduate level education is in nursing?
Oh, well, graduate education right now in nursing, there's about 17% of the nation's nurses have a master's degree, and it's about 2% that have a doctoral degree at this point in time. There's just an amazing increase interest in continuing on with professional growth. So that's actually been wonderful for nursing. And it's very important, particularly at the graduate level, because right now the hot areas are nurse practitioners. That's just going to continue to grow because there is a national shortage of primary care physicians, and we're anticipating that that'll grow for NPs to help accommodate that gap. We also will see an increase certainly in the DNP, but also the PhD, because we have this huge thing called retirement that is facing a large number of our faculty nationally. And as many as 25% of all faculty are anticipated to retire nationally in the next 5 to 10 years max. And I can tell you just here at the College of Nursing, we're anticipating a 20% change just over the next year. So that's a large amount of people, but that also requires that we have people with advanced degrees who really are positioned and empowered to really train that next generation of nurse that we will need, that's going to be very different than how any of us were trained. And that includes people who are prepared for innovation and design. We've actually just started a course here, undergraduate course on design and innovation in healthcare, but other things, including telehealth. We have a course that's going to be launched next spring on telehealth that's interdisciplinary, because this is really the innovations and the wave of the future. So I think graduate education is going to be a very good, viable option for people moving forward.
Thank you very much. I have a little interesting question here. Dean Wolfe mentioned that the 75th anniversary celebration is starting this year, and something that Rebecca did not mention is that she happens to sit on the 75th anniversary planning committee because she doesn't have enough to do. So she added one more great URI role to her position. So I'd love for Rebecca to share with us a little bit about what might be coming up during this special year.
Sure. Been a very active group, and we're very excited about the 75th anniversary. And we've had a committee that's been working for well over a year now. Unfortunately, COVID has sort of changed many of the activities that we originally planned to have, so we've had to take a little course correction there on that. But I can tell you that if you're an alumni and you get invited to anything virtually with the 75th anniversary, we have been planning some of that. We have looked at the history of the College of Nursing. I was part of the group that actually wrote the entire history, and we are in the process of looking at how to disseminate that history. We might actually have a published document that we could get out to people. And in doing so, I learned a whole lot about my own organization in doing that. We have a list of luminaries, and we've asked our alumni out there in the hinterlands to make sure that if you have somebody you believe belongs on the luminaries list, to let us know that. So I'll put a plug in for that. And we're in the process of finalizing the luminaries list. And then I think the last thing I would say is that we are going to have a signature event, and we're not sure how that is going to happen right now. We're thinking we're obviously next year. We don't know what's going to happen next year. It would be lovely if we could do it all in person, which would be great. We may not be able to, but there will be a signature event. So look forward to that and look at your communication, and you'll learn all about all the things that we're going to do for the 75th anniversary. It's an exciting time.
Thank you, Rebecca. Certainly will be. We have another question. Can someone please discuss the current RN to BSN program as, Suzanne says that she understands it's only virtual without clinical experiences currently.
I'm happy to address that. The RN to BS program actually exists in two different formats. One is face-to-face, boots on the ground on campus, which we still do in specialized cohorts. And then another is through online. And there are particular areas, particularly around community, that do require a level of clinical experience or experiential education that does go on. So it's not as though they get absolutely nothing at this point in time. So I think that might help clarify. And again, these are often people who have been experienced registered nurses for long periods of time, and they're looking to come back for often some of the arts and sciences of the baccalaureate degree as well. So that is in existence and still going strong.
Thank you. And we have another question from Kimberly. What do you foresee as future leadership opportunities for nurse leaders given the shift in healthcare strategy and processes?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm not sure whether to have a crystal ball or a magic 8-ball to answer that one. But I think that there are ample opportunities that are coming up. One is we know that there's this huge continued shift of care from hospital settings to non-hospital settings, whether it be home or community-based. And from that perspective, I think that there is this whole entrepreneur area in terms of innovations around clinics, other ways that we could be delivering care, whether it's virtual or not, just whole host of possibilities that will emerge, including boutique clinics, you name it. I also think that palliative and elder care will continue to remain a priority area in our healthcare system. And I think that nursing is well positioned to take on those leadership roles as well. Certainly our NPs will continue with care there. Our staff nurses can take leadership areas that they can develop some additional expertise. Another particular area is actually policy and advocacy. And we've seen that there have been a number of initiatives about getting nurses on boards, but I think you're going to see more nurses leading, not just necessarily being on, but leading boards and running major health corporations, hospitals, but also some of the policy areas. So if you think about the transparency of cost today, what are the outcomes associated with those costs, and what are the areas of influence on those costs? And I'm pleased to say that one of our own faculty, Dr. Betty Vamber, just recently was appointed to the Medicare Payment Advisory Committee, which is an incredible role and place to have nursing there. So I think that there are I think the sky's the limit. This is really an exciting, challenging, but exciting time to be a nurse and think about what your future can hold.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Wolfe. We have one final question, just enough time to squeeze this in, from Christina, who graduated in 1989. She asks, do you have or are you planning any undergraduate courses to introduce the students to the role of a nursing in informatic technology?
Great question. We do have some that we're looking at data analysis, I don't want to say stats, but database analysis, informatics, those types of things, trying to get those implemented related to healthcare versus necessarily just a data analysis type of program. So yes, we are looking at that, and also including some of those things in both informatics, but also in innovations. Because there are some overlap there in terms of what you could potentially do. But great, because nurses need to know how to do that, and particularly if you want to go and impact outcomes and look at outcomes or the impact of certain outcomes based on what you're intervening or doing. Thank you.
Okay, I will take this moment to thank everyone for participating in today's presentation. What wonderful stories of URI's significant impact in nursing. Our next 75th anniversary event will be the Dean's Distinguished Lecture on October 21st at 5 o'clock, featuring a timely presentation by Dr. Nancy Van Deventer of NYU on the impact of COVID-19 on New York nurses at the height of the surge. The COVID pandemic is both a health and economic crisis for our community, including many students. The College of Nursing would not be what it is today without philanthropic support. As I said before, you can show Rhody spirit and provide immediate support for students and the college through the URI Day of Giving in just 2 days. Instructions for making your gift, as well as a recording of today's session, will be emailed to you in the very near future. Thank you again for your time, for your interest, and for your future support. Go Rhody.